Hey, Warrior Saints. Glad to have you beautiful people with us as we continue our conversation from yesterday. How do we get through that? How do we deal with pressure? I mean, we've pounded it, to death. It's there and we all know it.
Yeah.
Everybody has it, everybody feels it. They all know what we're talking about. How do we deal with it?
Well, I think it's great that you've set the stage the way that that you've just set that stage. I think it's there's got to be a way through it.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot about crucifixional living, and I think that is the way through it.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that you get through all of that is by following God's commandments. I mean, they lead unto life. They work us through there. And I'm excited to see how we move things out throughout this discussion to see how that gets played out and where that all goes.
Okay, you're onto it. I think I agree with you. Obviously, I agree with you. I mean, crucifixional living is our thing, and it's really exemplified for us in the Gospel of Mark, right?
Mhm.
Okay, I mean, all over Scripture, but in the Gospel of Mark, we see in chapter 8, there's an interesting phrase in the Gospel of Mark, enti odo, on the way or in the way. Jesus is constantly in the way or on the way to Jerusalem. Sometimes you may hear it translated as the road or the path, whatever, but it's enti odo, in the way. And now he's on the way to Jerusalem. And in chapter 8, he says to his disciples, "Who do people say that I am? Who do men say that I am?" To which they respond. Peter actually responds. Well, some of them respond. Some say, Peter's in a moment. Some say you're John the Baptist. Some say you're Elijah or one of the prophets, right? So the word on the street, Jesus says, what's the word on the street about me? They think you're prophetic, right? All right, but who do you say that I am? He asks them, to which now Peter responds, you are the Christ, right? So Peter is responding, all right, like literally the one that we've been waiting for, the promised Messiah, the Christos, the anointed one. This is you. And Jesus says to them, fine, don't tell anybody about it. Now, the very next verse after that, he's been declared the Christ by his closest and by Peter, the rock, no less. He then says to them that the Son of Man is going up to Jerusalem where he will suffer, and the Pharisees and scribes and all the elders, and they will put him to death and beat him, mock him, scourge him. And on the third day, he will rise. Now, you just said, I asked you the question, who do people say that I am? You told me they said I'm a prophet. Then I went specific. I said, who do you say that I am? They said, you're the man. You're the Christ, right? The man. Okay, now, we've established that. Here's what the man is going to do. He's going to have to go to the cross. And there will be a result at the end, a third-day resurrection, the empty tomb. But Peter doesn't like it. He's probably still stuck in worldly patterns, and he says, look, Lord, no. It says in Greek, the word is harsh, that he began to rebuke him. To which Jesus responds, like, could you imagine, like we were talking about this, in worship the other day, like, could you imagine you rebuking the Lord? I mean, to rebuke anyone, for heaven's sakes, but the Lord. And Jesus sees everybody else looking around at him, and it says he took Peter, began to rebuke him, and said what is, in my estimation, the nastiest phrase in all of Scripture, get behind me, Satan. Right? It's the only time here in the other gospel, the parallels in the synoptics, where Peter is called Satan. Peter's the only one who's ever called Satan, right? And you are not on the side of God, but on the side of men. Right. So you, Peter, are satanic in this moment. You just declared me the Christ. I'm telling you the Christ is going to the cross unto victory. You're telling me, no, let's do it my way. That's satanic. That's on the side of men, not of God. Get behind me. Right. And then he turns to the people to set them straight and says, if anybody wants to be, this is, I think, 34, right? Verse 34. If anybody would be with me, he must take up, or she must take up their own cross and follow me. Right. So all of that rambling to say, look, the message, as I see it, to answer our question about how do we deal with pressure, I mean, you could imagine that the crucifixion that Christ knew, inevitably knew was coming, was probably more pressure than you or anybody ever feel. And so in dealing with that, he decides to take the weapon of the cross, to slay that monster of death and sin, and face all that pressure. So if that modus operandi works for the Lord, he's telling us, you do the same thing. And though I don't have to slay death, he did that. Though I don't have to deal with sin, he did that. I do have to deal with the pressures in my life, and I must do that with a crucifixion life.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's the way that we keep moving, and it's great stuff that you just laid. How do we then put that into action? what do we do to put that and really live that in our lives every single day?
That's a great question. Great stuff. Maybe at this point we can transition into answering that question. Hey, Warrior Saints, thanks for joining us. To watch the next part of the episode, join us again tomorrow. And as always, keep walking on the way of the Warrior Saint.